Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We are excited to introduce the last panel of the summit, Collective Liberation. Before we begin, we would like to give a special thanks to our accessibility coordinator, Melissa Colibri, and our ASL interpreter for the panel this evening, Stephanie Chow. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Also, want to send a gentle reminder to all of you to please take your time speaking and pause often if you can for Stephanie to be able to provide ASL interpretation. While I'm here, I'd like to thank our Portal to Liberation Planning Committee, Stacy, Piggy, and Vicente. You all did a phenomenal job, and grateful for your leadership and how you all coordinated for today to happen. Also, a big thank you to all of our participants today who have contributed their talents, wisdom, and experience with us. Dylan Rodriguez, the Youth Committee, Doom, Pebbles, Iman, AK, Kaya, and Vicente. Josen, Sarat, AT, Saparna, also a big thank you to all of our participants today who have contributed talent, wisdom, and experience with us. Jasmine, Malia, Grace, Pebbles, Layla, Mimi, and Vicente, Magnetic North, Ntayuna, Analora, Jen, Fong, and our speakers for the next panel, who I'm excited for. Grace, one of our co-founders of Asian Solidarity Collective, to introduce next, as she will moderate the Collective Liberation panel. Grace?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for sticking through today for this final panel. I'm excited to hear our speakers. Let me introduce them and then we'll get going. First, we have Annie Rios, Executive Director of Uprise Theater. Annie is Helen's daughter and Daniel's mom. She is from Southeast San Diego. She is an attorney and an activist. Next, we have Jeanine Erikat. She's the General Coordinator of the Palestinian Youth Movement, San Diego Chapter. Jeanine is the daughter of Palestinian immigrants born and raised on occupied Kuyyemayy land. She currently serves as the General Coordinator and I just said that, so sorry. General Coordinator of the Palestinian Youth Movement San Diego Chapter. The Palestinian Youth Movement, PYM, is a transnational independent grassroots movement of young Palestinians in Palestine and in exile worldwide as a result of the ongoing Zionist colonization and occupation of our homeland. Sorry, I think this is a little jumbled up, so my apologies. Next, we have Karina Frost Moreno, who is an activist, organizer, and musician from Chula Vista, representing the Armadillos. We have Kelsey Daniels, an organizer, artist, and a Batty scholar. Kelsey Daniels believes in the power of sharing stories. She has a fierce love for her community and has been blessed to build with several amazing orgs like March for Black Women San Diego, Black Lives Matter San Diego, and We All We Got San Diego. She is committed to collective liberation of those intentionally marginalized by the systems of power. In addition to organizing, Kelsey uses her online platform to lead with vulnerability and facilitating discussions around fat liberation, mental health, anti-Black racism, and more. And finally, we have Nancy Nguyen, who is a civic engagement organizer for the Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans, also known as PANA. She's a child to working class Vietnamese refugees and a granddaughter to a prisoner of war. Nancy understands the multi-generational impact of war and the need for abolition of prisons, borders, police, capitalism, and imperialism. Nancy has a collection of case management, legislative, public policy, and advocacy work. As PANA's civic engagement organizer, Nancy leads the organization's civic engagement campaigns and develops strong immigrant refugee youth leaders. Thank you so much to our panelists for being here. We appreciate all the work that you do daily for our community. I just want to honor you all because of the work that you do, and that you show up for Asian Solidarity Collective, and that we've been able to work in collaboration with you all. So thank you for being here. I'll just go ahead and start by throwing out the first question, and we can either answer in order or feel like jumping in, and really just about you all having that conversation. So I'll just start with, what does collective liberation mean for you? Don't be shy.
I'll go ahead and get us started. Thank you so much for having me here. I am not only honored to be invited as a speaker, but I am thrilled to be on this panel with so many wonderful stewards in our community, activists, and comrades. Your question, I think, is so profound, right? Like, I could have spent months thinking of my answer and still not had something precise to what I feel collective liberation looks like, and more importantly, what it feels like. Because I think that we here today have a fundamental understanding that it's not only simply performative or just what it looks like, but it's what it feels like when communities come together and unite, all for our liberation. I have something I've said at other panels, and I'll say it again here today, is that my liberation is intrinsically tied to yours. And I say that all the time because I truly, truly believe it. There is no way that I can be free if everyone is not free. My liberation is reliant on your liberation. My freedom is reliant on your freedom. I am just a small speck in the universe of our collective liberation. And I think that once we have that understanding that we're all reliant on each other, that my freedom is entwined with prisoners' freedoms and immigrant freedoms and queer freedoms, then we start to understand that none of us can be free if not all of us are.
Jeanine, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I can go ahead. Again, thank you all not only for having me, but for you all sticking it out to the last panel of the day on your Saturday. It really means a lot, like Annie said, to be on this panel with such amazing comrades. Annie said it so well, so I'll try to say what it means to me. I think similarly, it's collective liberation. I see it as my liberation is tied to everyone here in this virtual room and across the world, and transcending all borders and constructs that continue to oppress us. And I think the way that I constantly look at it is when I think about the intersections of our oppressions. If, for example, when we like the border wall, the illegal border wall that's being built right is the same construction company that builds the illegal border wall in Palestine. The same companies that invest in private prisons here are the same companies that invest in the legal occupation of Palestine. And all these examples really continue to ground me and help me envision a world where we not only abolish our oppressed systems of oppression and the systems that have inherently been created to prevent our liberation, but to bring us together and to envision a world that we have yet to see, right? I really think of the work of Octavia Butler and the work that has been done in her honor called the Parable of Octavia Butler, and the theory behind it that, activism and social justice and the way we envision liberation is all work of science fiction because we have yet to see it. Which is why what makes today so special, and that we're creating this and we're envisioning this together, and we define what our collective liberation looks like.
And I can expand on that. I really resonate with what Annie and Jeanine are saying. I think collective liberation for me is like on a daily basis, trying to live my life, understanding that all of our struggles are intimately connected, like here in the US and transcontinentally, and trying to align my work and my daily life, serving people who are most targeted by like global capitalism and militarized violence, and seeing how those things play out in like small communities, but how that it's not isolated. Like all of the things I saw in my like low income community of color filled with undocumented people and refugees wasn't isolated. Like this looks the same in communities all across California and all across the US. And then it also looks and feels very similar when we take a microscope and look at other small rural communities in other countries. And trying to be really intentional about like not leaving out other communities just because we don't identify with that certain community. Because like Annie said, like I am not free until my brothers and sisters in prison are free, until people held at detention centers are free, until people in Palestine are free. Like it's just not possible for one group to be like, quote, free at the expense of and on top of the bodies of other people.
Would like to, number one, I'm already excited because these co-panelists are out here talking all the great things. I'd like to add, I think like collective liberation and like collective dreaming, right? Like our imagination, I think like being able to say that there is solutions, like there is world building that can happen, when we get clear on what are the things that are supposed to be tearing us down, right? And what are the patterns that we're noticing? And like, what are the potentials? I really love the idea of like the science fiction and building, because I think that our power lies in looking beyond the tangible things that we can see, right? Looking beyond the despair, like holding on to the things that we see that are horrible. And also, what are the things that are possible that the white imagination tells us isn't, right? And really getting back in touch with like, what does it look like to consider each other our collective responsibility, right? And to move beyond being bystanders in the fight for liberation.
Kadi, did you want to add?
Yeah, I will add a little. I have to admit that the question, even though I've pondered it ever since I read the prompt for this panel, the question is so intense, like the compa said in the beginning. I could ponder this forever. But after hearing everything that all of you said, I think what I would like to add is that for me, this sense of collective liberation means like becoming more of a part of the world than I have ever been. To allow myself to feel the pain and the suffering, and to dive into it and not necessarily have the answers, but to be there. And we use the word solidarity so much, and really it is that. And I think of it more like in love, you know, being in love, because you don't even need to like someone that you love. And I think those lessons have truly taught me what it means in the sense of the Armadillos. You know, we will look for anyone who has lost their way, and no matter what they did. And so beginning with that thought and building on it is where I have kind of built my idea of what this means. Thank you.
That's really profound, Cuddy, in the sense of like love and not liking that person, and it makes me really think about what I tell a lot of people is to not wait till it gets personal to get involved, to do something. When you have a personal injury, either to yourself or to your family, but that you get involved now when you can learn a lot, and also aren't wrapped up in maybe deep emotions, although I think our emotions can also help fuel and charge the way that we move. But can you all speak to maybe some personal experiences that have brought you to this work, or the ways that you've worked with each other in this, when it's not something that is, again, maybe this is the wrong question, because I think all of you feel personal, even if it's not personal to your own community. But what, I guess, just share some of those experiences that brought you to where you are now and the work that you do.
It's always difficult when there's a panel of this size, because I think we're trying to decide how to play double and to jump in, like, when are we going to do that, because no one wants to talk over the other one. But I'll go ahead and definitely I'll defer. If anybody else would like to go first, I'd be more than happy to hang back and allow for that. But I know, your question, if I understand it correctly, what brought us to do this work? And there's so many things. And right now, when other panelists were speaking, we talk a lot about struggle and this idea that it's not sorrowful to do this work, but that it's difficult, and it is. But I think part of collective liberation also includes joy, celebrating with each other's joy. And I love the idea that it's love. You show up in love, even when you're angry, even when you're hangry, even when you don't really want to be there, even when you're tired. But you still show up because you love that person, and you want to share in their joy, which the struggle towards collective liberation will bring to them. And even sometimes, the dancing that happens at different events, the laughter that happens, the community that is built. I think that is something that has always drawn me into the struggle. It's always drawn me into being an activist. It's not just, okay, we're fighting the man, we're raging against the system, but we're also sharing in this collective love and joy too. There has to be things that replenish our cup as we are using so much energy to continue to work. And the idea of dreaming, I think that is something that is new to me. As an attorney, that's my profession. I've used my work to do human rights work, and there's this idea that there are rules, and that the way things are the way they're going to be. But in order to embrace the idea of abolition, that requires for us to dream of new things that haven't existed before. So now when I talk to new lawyers or law school students, I ask them to lawyer the way they want the world to be, not the way the world is. Lawyer the way you want to see things done. If you're out there in these streets and you're protesting, bring those people into your courtroom so that there are now witnesses to potential injustices that are happening in this courtroom. You can power build, movement build, and people build the same way you would as an organizer or as an activist, as an attorney. You just have to dream that up. You just have to be brave enough to dream that up. So I think this concept of dreaming and science fiction, I love that. I think that that's what we're doing. We have taken the manual or the script away from oppressors, and we're saying we're going to write our own fucking story right now. And I think that is such a beautiful concept, and one that keeps bringing me back to this work. And I know that as we're talking about, specifically, I know Asian Solidarity Collective was intended to be a support towards, all of us joining in with Black liberation. I always share this story because I think something that is important is that we not be afraid to learn new things. And I remember working as an immigration attorney. I was outside of Otay Mesa Detention Center, and I was protesting the detention center because I felt how absurd that there is a detention center that houses people simply for trying to find a better life and for crossing some bullshit border that shouldn't exist in the first place. And as I was out there and I was contemplating this and we're at this protest, I thought of all of my Black comrades that have told me before, this is happening here in the United States with prisons. But I didn't feel it as personally because it wasn't being done to people who look like me. And that's when I took a step back and said, this isn't about what looks like you or what feels like you. It's about realizing that that's our collective liberation, is that people in this detention center cannot be free if we still have prisons anywhere. So that I think there's a resistance to say, yeah, I'm still learning, but that learning curve is what keeps me coming back and doing this work, is because I need to be humble enough to know that I don't know everything. And that I'm continuing to learn, and I'm learning about my own anti-Blackness. I'm learning about my own colorism. I'm learning about what I do to uphold white supremacy. I'm learning about all of that too as I go. And I want to figure it out so that I can dismantle it. So those are just some of the reasons of why I come back and I'm doing this work and what brought me here.
I'm definitely feeling that it's a large panel. I don't want to go in. But Annie, what you said about like your personal commitment to reflect on ways in which we like uphold white supremacy, and ways in which we have to like learn and unlearn, like really sits with me. So thank you for sharing that. Because I don't think that we like to think of ourselves as having problematic tendencies. We are also deeply flawed under capitalism, and under white supremacy. So I thank you for saying that. And so in terms of personal experiences that brought me to this framework, I think a lot about citizenship, like how citizenship is literally a myth, to exclude people, and to exclude ancestral people that like deserve to have this land back. My dad's undocumented. I have a lot of undocumented family and a lot of family that are refugees. And I at a very young age, when I like learned about the concept of citizenship, it never sat well with me. Like I was coaching my mom through her citizenship test when I was like 8. And how like the concept of citizenship as a 7-year-old didn't really make any sense to me. And that was really like infuriating and frustrating for me. And I think about like how the Chinese Exclusion Act of the 1800s really set the precedent for our current deportation regime. Like we literally forced Chinese people to come to the States to build railroads. And then we pumped out propaganda to associate Chinese men with the opioid crisis, and how there's all this propaganda that Chinese men were luring white women into these like opioid dens. and how we criminalize them and then put them on a conveyor belt to deportation, and how we are just living reiterations of this in present day. Yeah, so I think to the question, I have just like connected a lot of my personal experiences and grievances with the concept of citizenship and how it relates to all of the history that has upheld white supremacy and allowed us to justify excluding people. And now it's like layered with the criminalization of certain groups, and therefore the deportation of certain groups. And yeah, I think that's like what led me to this framework of collective liberation and my work at PANA.
I'll go. So I'll say for me, my entrance into this work was through joining up with, well, I've always been someone who's like, this doesn't feel right, right? You know, like, and I remember being young and like always having questions and never really getting satisfying answers. And, you know, I think like I went to school for sociology, which is a whole other thing, and then graduated and did a whole bunch of unlearning around respectability, right? But getting involved with March for Black Women and then just having conversations with people about like, oh, these are the connection pieces, right? And really learning how insidious, you know, I don't call it white supremacy anymore. I call it the myth of white supremacy, or white valerism. But, you know, like the ways in which it shape shifts, but it's still constant. And I think like being able to come into it from that experience and then really leaning into, like I said, imagination and dreaming, like what could it look like differently, right? And like being able to be in community across cultures, you know, with We All We Got, and like learning around transformative justice and just really thinking through what does it take for us to get ready for, you know, these things, right? Like what does it take to like move into collective consciousness around like how we can start unpacking, you know, accessing liberation in our lives, right? Like thinking through what abolition looks like in the now. And so that's the thing that gets me excited is like, what does it look like to build in community in real time, and unpack all these lies that we were indoctrinated into around how there's scarcity and it's impossible.
I'll jump in. Thank you so much, Kelsey. I feel like I'm very lucky to have met the people that are considered organizers in San Diego. I'm a musician, and I actually didn't, get any education after high school. So, things are messed up, and you feel it, but you don't have the language. And so meeting a lot of the people on this panel has brought me closer to being able to voice it, and then you're able to act once that happens. I'm a part of a search and rescue group, and we go in the desert to look for our migrant siblings who have lost their way. But at the same time, I also have a uncle who has been missing since 2007, and so my aunt is a leader of a search group in Ensenada, Mexico as well. And so I have been blessed in a sad way, but we talk about the joy of organizing with so many incredible people in Mexico, all over the country, that we have searched together for their loved ones. And now we are planning together a international brigade. So we are helping each other learn what how forced disappearances and forced migrations are related. They're the same. And just working through these pains and these joys together has honestly been what's brought me deepest into this work, is trying to think of ways to connect with people crossing oceans to be here. So we can also look for, our Black siblings who are coming from the Caribbean, who are coming from Africa. So we can look for our Asian siblings, there are displaced people everywhere in the world, and that has brought me to this sense of collective liberation, where I don't need to necessarily be everywhere in the world to learn and to connect and to build. So it's been by inspiration and also personal pain, and seeing people like you never give up. Well, thank you for that question.
I have chills listening to all of you. You all have moved me in so many ways, and my mind is going like faster than I can speak. I think for me, something that I think that I really think through and has brought me to this work, and to continue to do this, one was, there's a saying from one of the first prime ministers of the legal state of Israel who said, "The old will die and the young will forget, and Palestine will have never existed." And for me, I'm the third generation. We say we're the third generation after Nakba, or catastrophe, and we have generations after us still here, and we're still remembering, we're still on the streets, wherever we are in the world. And being part of that has really moved me to, I think, like I mentioned, like learning about things about Palestine and then bringing them and then seeing it here happen. Even these questions of citizenship that, like, as Nancy brought up, I remember being so confused because my parents were born in Kuwait, but they don't have Kuwaiti citizenship because their dad doesn't, and they don't have Palestinian citizenship, and they have like Jordanian citizenship, but they didn't really get it. And then it's like all these things that I never understood about my family, and then calling family back home and, "Oh, you can't go to certain places. What are you talking about? What does this mean?" And then going in person and seeing like the segregated streets, different licenses, meeting Palestinians who are in what we call 1948, the land that was stolen in 1948, that's now known as Israel, and meeting Palestinians who are like, "Well, we sneak in here every day to work because there are no jobs in the West Bank because the economy collapsed." And so I think seeing that and then connecting it back here, is really what has brought me to this work, and that it's everywhere, and our struggle is all across the world, but so is our joy and our happiness and our liberation. And the last thing was that was thinking about Ferguson in 2014 and watching comrades on the ground being like tear gassed, and then on Twitter people in Gaza who are tear gassed by the same tear gas, telling comrades here, this is how you get tear gas out of your eyes. This is what you should do. This is what you don't do. I just recently learned that a common trick that they use in the West Bank is you take an onion and you cut it in half and you smelt the onion to burn it out of your eyes. So again, because we're a people of farmers and agriculture, and I know that we have people in this room and across the world who can share similar stories and struggles. I think that's what's continued to bring me here. And also feeling, I was born here, but never feeling that belonging. And growing up Muslim in a post 9/11 world and knowing like I'm hearing lies on the TV all the time about us. So they got to be lying about other things too. But we can't be the only one who they're telling this false narrative about. Thank you all.
Thank you. I'm also trying to digest everything you're saying and respond back. Jeanine, it's not even even just not feeling like you belong, but being told that you don't belong here, right? Whether that's really direct or indirect daily, just the questions of where are you from, and that not being enough, right? That you don't belong here. I'm thinking about, I mean, the five of you have been doing this work. You show up daily. You have been committed to this work, and so it seems like some of these questions or thoughts are things in the way past for you because you've moved beyond it. But can you speak to what is the difference between being an ally and a co-conspirator? And I especially thinking about just that term, stand in solidarity. You know, having conversations with Candy about just the word stand and how ableist that is, but how also it's very passive. There's no action behind it. So can you all speak to what does it mean to be an ally and what does it mean to be a co-conspirator? And a lot of judgment can go into those statements too. I think earlier AT was saying they're a Virgo and they have the answers, and I feel like that's how I am. I'm a Virgo and I have the answers, and how do I not allow my judgment to get in the way of building with people?
I know I just spoke, but I can go since I haven't started yet. But if anyone wants to go, please jump in. If not, I'll go ahead. I think you said it exactly, Grace, when you said it's so passive. When I hear ally, I hear someone is just going to watch me struggle. And they're not doing much. They're not taking it into their hands. It's more of a me issue, my struggle, and they're just here silently, offering support and whatever that means. I think co-conspirator and even the negative connotation that comes with that really means you're fighting with me. If not like putting your body on the ground, and we know that there's different implications. It's standing up in the silent room. It's pushing in your everyday life. It's like, when I think of an ally, I think I have to be in the room, in my case, for you to speak up about Palestine, as an example. If you're a co-conspirator, you don't need me with you to speak up. And I don't mean that a co-conspirator is co-opting or silencing people or taking platforms that belong to the people in the struggle that is being talked about or the work that's being done. But I mean, you can further this work without knowing me, right? Like these ideas that were brought up earlier that you love someone before you like them, and you care about the struggle, not necessarily because it directly impacts you or you had to witness it, right? I feel like an ally means they had to witness the suffering, or they had to witness it you had to get an ally to buy into your struggle. That's the way that I think of it. And I think a co-conspirator is someone who's with you every day, fighting against all these systems and loving you and loving each other and passing on and keeping the joy, right? That everyone has brought up today. I'll pass it on to whoever feels comfortable speaking.
Yeah, I can go. So I think ally and co-conspirator is also a title, but I think ally a lot of times is a title that's easy to grab to the virtue signal, right? And so it doesn't necessarily mean anything besides the fact that you ally yourself with the cause, right? And I think co-conspirator, accomplishment, like it means that you see it and you also see the need for action, and not just the need for action as a bystander, but like, where am I impacting? Where am I moving in it as well? What I think everyone kind of hit on the same thing. If I didn't know somebody, what is my investment in it, right? And I think that's something that it's heavy. It requires a constant thinking of like, where am I showing up, right? Versus an ally is you can get a sticker, you can you can send $5 and you feel like you've done the work. And I think like co-conspiratorship is more than just, you know, throwing money at a thing and thinking that the work is over.
To add, I really like this question, to add on to what other folks were saying. I feel like sometimes, how do I say this? I feel like sometimes when someone thinks of themselves as an ally, it's more about them feeling good in themselves, and them like virtue signaling to show that they are like a good person, even though they're like literally doing the bare minimum by voicing their support, without doing any hard, laborious work, to use their privilege to help protect someone, like protect a vision or uplift them. And that's what I think what a co-conspirator is. Like, I think that they are really committed to the work despite not being in the room with someone who is like most impacted. And I think like co-conspirators are actively making daily choices to be in solidarity with other people. And then like once they've used their privilege and they've done the work, they step aside and let the most impacted people shine. Because to be in solidarity with people is not about you shining. It's about following the lead of the people that are most impacted. And I feel like sometimes when people say that they're allies, they just want to be recognized and given flowers to for being a good person without ever having to do the work. Yeah, so I guess like co-conspirators are like people who actually do the work, and let other people who are most impacted like shine.
I think, you know, when we talk about what someone calls themselves, I don't know if I care. I think it's behind the work that they're doing. So there have been transformations. I'm thinking, you know, about before it used to be cultural competency. Now that has been sort of tossed to the wayside, and it's cultural humility, because we realize that there's a better way to do something. So I think there were people who were always co-conspirators who called themselves allies and will continue to call themselves allies, but they're doing the work of a co-conspirator. So I don't want to get too caught up in what name we're giving somebody, but I think the intention behind the name is really what we're focusing on. And Jeanine, when she first mentioned it, she said, you know, there might be a negative connotation, and I'm thinking about it as an attorney in a criminal sense. What happens when you are a co-conspirator? You get the same sentence as the person who did the crime. So when you think about it in that way, that's what a co-conspirator is whether you did the crime, and in this case, whether you are the impacted person, whether you're not, you're showing up with them, you are going to show out with them, you're going to protect them, even when they're not in the room with you. You're part now of this conspiracy for liberation. And you can't get away. You can't step back. You can't make yourself or stop yourself from being implicated in this the same way you would in a conspiracy for a crime. And I think that that's really where the power stands, that somebody is willing to be with you and accept the consequences for the disruption that may be caused when you're seeking liberation.
Kari, did you have anything to add to that question?
Yes, I'd like to add a few things, but also I agree with all the like contradicting complexities of what, you know, these words that like we make up mean. But what, you know, an ally to me is someone who like doesn't disagree. You know, like you can say, oh, like people shouldn't die crossing the border. Oh, you know, people shouldn't be in jail. Like they don't disagree with the idea. It just, in my mind, there's more to it for them. And that person probably will not risk their life for me. And I suppose a co-conspirator, the little images are tiny on my phone, but the lawyer who said the co-conspirator is someone who's like right there with you and could get, in the sense of the law, the same sentence as you, and in the sense of the world, the same sentence as you. That's everything. I think a co-conspirator recognizes that sometimes lives should be risked, and or reputations or opportunities. So I speak from the life point of view because my mortality is always in my face. You know, people are killed in Tijuana for looking for their loved ones, and I have accepted that could happen to me. But I also see other things in the line of fire as well. You know, like I just said, reputations, etc., which, you know, are worth a lot in our society. And I believe that, you know, the words ally and co-conspirator can get confusing. Yeah, we made them up, but it does help us feel a little safer. And if someone doesn't know that word, when you're explaining it to them and you could see their eyes, I think, illuminate, then I feel like we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, Patty.
No, I've seen people. No. I just wanted to talk briefly. You know, I've seen people who have never probably done any sort of activism for like another country come to a search brigade in Tijuana, you know, white folks, and risk their lives. I was like, okay, you know, you don't need to like have an award ceremony, but it's like, you're a co-conspirator right now. You are risking your life. And I think that's more of an anecdote that really made an impact on me. People with citizenship, so-called, right? And like now I'm going on a tangent because this was a really good question and all of you gave me a lot to think about. So I'll end it here. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Kadi, when you were talking, it makes me think of, there's a Toni Morrison quote where she basically said it comes down to like, would you save my life or would you take it, right? And I think like there's a, I just went through a recent experience with someone who had class and race privilege, who made a decision that put me in housing insecurity, right? And I think that there is a space around like when it's inconvenient, but it is in service of liberation, where do you show up, right? Because I think it's really easy. It's super easy to like, when, you know, all your ducks are in a row, to say, I'm with this moment. I believe in the service of this thing. And I think that there is a collective shift that we're not, if you live in this country, you are ingrained in this idea culturally, society, like that we're told, like, you know, like you take care of home, like you take care of you. And it's really like, are you doing the work of seeing that this is all interconnected? Are you doing the work of seeing that, like, we have to be active instead of passive in acknowledging the way that, like, violence is real, right? And I think that is also the work of, like, being a co-conspirator. It's not like a state of being. It's like an active, like, when it's uncomfortable, where am I showing up? Like, what support do I need to, like, be building for me to continue to show up the right way? And I think, yeah, I just wanted to kind of lift that up. I think the co-conspiratorship is like, when it is uncomfortable, where am I leaning, you know?
I think that the statement of risk is really powerful. The question of risk, like, how much are you willing to risk? I think my partner and I, as parents, would do anything for our children. We would risk anything. But how can that translate to people that we don't know well, right? How can we put that in a place where we're, like you said, Kelsey, when we're willing to give up, especially when it's really uncomfortable, not when it's easy for us, not when we can still sit back and reap privileges and I guess not be bothered so much by stepping out. That's really deep, and it's making me really think about a lot of the ways that I haven't risked enough, and how can I risk more in that way, in supporting what I say and what I do. We're coming towards the end, so I will just leave this question. I'm thinking a lot about, Kadi, you were saying about education, and Jeanine, you mentioned, like, being educated around the people. As an educator, of course, I'm going to say, get your education, go to college. But I also was not given the tools in my college education. We are not equipped, and education can come in many different forms, and from people without degrees, by experiences, by being in conversation with community people. Like, deep education happens there. And so with that idea of educating, will you leave us with one or two ways of how folks can step away with this in nuggets of how do we build collective liberation intersectionally? What are some active steps that people can do without doing the work for them? What can someone from this conversation take away and move forward?
I would say find some people to, you know, just start having conversations with, right? To, like I said, I think the one beautiful part of, you know, being inside, you know, for the past 2 years is, like, being able to build e-community with the folks that we got, and, like, just kind of have conversations about big ideas and, like, struggle together, right? Like, I'm so incredibly grateful for Kadi and just, like, conversations I think we were able to have at the beginning of, like, we got, like, in our TJ book club, you know, and really thinking through, like, what do these, like, big theories and constructs look like in real life, right? And, like, having spaces to, like, fuck up, you know, like, and having spaces to kind of be called in a way that isn't, you know, practicing a new way that's not carceral, right? And I think that is something, you know, I really want to see more opportunities, and I think that they're coming, right? To kind of move beyond the theory, because, like, we can just say go read a book, but that's cool. Now you know things, and it's just like it sits in a bank somewhere. But I think, like, reading a book with other people, you know, and, like, having conversations and, like, sometimes being like, okay, this doesn't feel realistic. Like I can't sit with this piece, but this is something that I want to like incorporate, and knowing that it's okay to start where you are, because even having those small moments is better than just like being passive, right? And I think as we build capacity together, I think kind of like what I was saying before, like, where are we building spaces where it can be risky, right? Like, because I think it's really hard to do things alone. But when I know that I at least have two other people who have my back, when I'm, maybe making good opportunity, making a stance to live in values, and I know that I have community beside me, that really is what's going to make it sustainable as we're, struggling together, because we don't do this alone.
I think that we spoke about this a bit when we were talking about co-conspirator and how somebody can be there as a co-conspirator with you without co-opting your movement. And I think a response that I would have to this question is that a way in which to begin to understand and come to this work and participate is to know when to step back and let others lead and learn from them. Because you can read and you can, research, and it's not going to be the same as listening to those with lived experiences. So if you really truly want to be a co-conspirator, and if you want to be a part of this work and you want to learn how to do this work, you have to also learn when to step back and when to know that this isn't for you. This is for somebody else, and you're doing this selflessly, to listen and to be there and to support, because we're all learning from each other. We're all teaching each other. I have spoken to almost everyone on this panel individually. We perhaps collectively have served on a panel before, and yet I still learned something new today. So this openness to learning, this openness to hearing people and allowing them to speak and giving them that space is what I think is going to be an introductory step to doing this work, and one that is going to have to be always present, because there are times when it isn't a struggle that you personally identify with, but it's somebody else's, and you want to be there for them. So you need to step back and listen to them so that they can show you what to do. So that would be kind of my answer onto intersectionality and making sure that it truly is knowing when to step back and when to allow others to lead and learn from them.
Yeah, I think on that note, and I agree with everything that's been said, is you don't need to have an opinion on everything. I think sometimes, and what I mean by that, and I don't say don't formulate it, I'm saying listen to the people who've been doing the work, right? Even with the work online, like I know in social media, there's a whole thing, we can talk a whole nother hour about like performative social media, but find the people who are on the ground in different ways, or like Annie just said, people with the lived experience. And you don't need to have your own opinion. I think there's like this hot thing on social media now where people throw around terms that they think are woke or whatever, and then they create like a new hot take for the week, and it gets like taken up without understanding and having that nuance, right? Like this work and the struggles that all of us have talked about today have been going on for like hundreds of years, if not thousands, right? And I think it's like, it's stepping back, it's listening, it's learning, it's being in community with people, it's being willing to put yourself out there and ask questions. But I think it's also coming in with the right intentions, and not just assuming that people have to accept you right away when you're learning about something, right? And I know we only have 2 minutes, so I'm gonna yield the rest of my time to Nancy, because I'm sure she's got something fire to say.
I brought time, but I'm gonna say, check yourself, check your family, check your friends, make new friends, because I'm sure that your friend group is really representative of like who you are and how you think. So make sure you check the fuck out of them. Whoever you're spending your most time with is a reflection of who you are. And if you think about who you spend your most time with and you're not proud of them, buddy, it's time to check yourself, check your friends. Yeah, and really lean into the values that you are trying to be in alignment with.
Kari, do you want to say something before we close?
Yeah, but I almost wish that last one was really the closer. But check yourself, yes. And I want to say be brave and be humble. And one thing that they say in AA, be gentle with others and be gentle with yourself. But just sign on to everything everyone said. Oh, I did have one thought though. Sorry to be awkward. Like, learn, if you work at a food distribution, find out what people's favorite foods are. If you organize with incarcerated folks, find out their birthday. Find out the names. Find out their astrological sign. Whatever your likes are. If you like music, find out their favorite musician. But don't just be on this stranger shit, because we are living and dying for each other. So, that's my piece of advice.
Wow, thank you all so much. For those that are listening in, you can reach out, follow these 5 folks and get more information and just learn by example how to show up. I'm speaking on behalf of ASC. We are so honored to have you with us here today, supporting our work and helping us check ourselves to show up for you all as well. So thank you so much. And I think Piggy is coming back in.
All right. Wow. Thank you so much, Grace, for moderating. And thank you to Annie, Jeanine, Kari, Kelsey, and Nancy. We truly appreciate you taking the time to share and be here with us. Thank you for sharing your experiences, your stories, and reflection of collective liberation. So much gratitude for all the work that you all do and that you continue to do. And thank you for all of your solidarity in this journey and work towards collective freedom. Thank you, Stephanie, for your time and energy and expertise in providing ASL interpretation for both panels. We really appreciate that. And now, friends, fam, comrades, thank you everyone for celebrating with us at our 1-year Portal to Liberation Anniversary Virtual Summit, Asian Americans and the Journey to Abolition. Thank you all to our speakers, performers, panelists, and presenters. Shout out to Dylan Rodriguez, Mimi Kim, the Youth Committee, which includes Doom, Pebbles, Iman, AK, Kaya, and Vicente. Shout out to Josen, Sarath, AT, Saparna, Janae, Jasmine, Malia, Grace, Layla, Magnetic North, and Tayona, Ana Laura, Jen, Fung, Annie, Kelsey, Jeanine, Kari, and Nancy. And shout out to all of our presenters today. Once again, thank you all for sharing your wisdom, time, energy, and talent with us today. We'd like to say thank you again to our facilitator and accessibility team, Melissa and Stephanie, for making our panels possible and accessible. Thank you to our ASC members and our planning committee and chat monitors. Shout outs to Margaret, Fung, and Pebbles. Yes, we'd also like to give a special shout out to all of our co-sponsors who supported us in making this event happen. Shout outs to 18 Million Rising, Asian Prisoners Support Committee, Can't Stop, Won't Stop Consulting, Defund the Police San Diego, Free the Mall San Diego, Korean Organization of San Diego, Kuyyemayy Mentorship Program, March for Black Women San Diego, Muslim American Society, PACE, PYM, Palestinian Youth Movement, Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans, Pillars of the Community, PUSO, SNOICE, Showing Up for Racial Justice, San Diego, Tech Workers Coalition, Uprise Theater, via Vote San Diego, and We Got San Diego. And a big thank you to all of you who have contributed today and who continue to donate. And we will be dropping the donate link once again in the chat for one last time. So if you'd like to show up for ASC and show support beyond the summit, please visit or save this link to help us reach our fundraising goals. We also consider, if you can, becoming a monthly donor of just $10 a month. It's called 10 on 10 campaign. The link is there as well. And we'd also invite you to join our ASC membership as well. We have that link in the chat that we'll be adding as well. And please continue to stay connected with us. We have our Instagram, our Facebook at Asian Solidarity Collective. We have our email, so stay in contact. Once again, much love and gratitude to you all in solidarity. Good night.